I thought it was. Okay, good. Okay. So before we start, I want to open this by setting a vision of what social robots in everyday life might look like. This is an image generated by ChatGPT when we asked to give it a prompt about families in the living room interacting with a robot. But to get a sense of for context, social robots like Pepper that we see on the screen are a unique category of robots that are designed to interact with people using social behaviors like conversation, turn taking, eye tracking, eye contact, and emotional expression. So these robots are not just machines that do things for us, they're designed to be with us. And over the next decade, we know that social robots will increasingly make their way into many private and public spaces, including homes. But you might wonder, what does it really mean to live with a robot? Well, let's look at this example. Let's imagine something like this child, Sarah. She's maybe practicing for her school play, and then she borrowed this robot as a way to run her lines every day. And as she gets to keep this robot in their home as she practices them. However, when we put a robot into the home, it's very likely that other household members, such as the parents, siblings, and any household member might be engaged, while on other days it might just be Sarah and Pepper. So this is what my work is driven by, the curiosity around interactions between people and robots. My goal is to rethink how we imagine and integrate socially interactive systems in the home, not just as novel devices, but as meaningful parts of daily routines and relationships. So throughout my PhD, I focused on the real-world design of robots, and I've observed many wonderful interactions between children and families and robots. In this video, you see children interacting with a robot starting from the very first moment of unboxing it. They were excited, dancing to the music, they're following the robot's yoga instructions, simply having fun. But sometimes we also observe signals that signals us about sibling conflict, parent-child conflict. And what we know from past research is that starting from the very first moments and of encountering a robot to the moment of saying goodbye, the social and emotional bonds between people and robots evolve. And while these bonds could promote value in family life, such as learning, creativity, curiosity, and joy, we still don't know to what extent values and concerns this integration influence. So given that, I'd like to situate my work in the broader scheme of studying social robots as products. It's important to recognize this, that social robots are not just research artifacts, but they are also commercialized products as being marketed to consumers and early adopters. So take this little guy for an example. This is Astro, which is a consumer-facing product for in-home use for the price tag for about $1,000 and a special Amazon invitation. Early adopters can purchase this robot and use it in their homes. Let's move on. Another example product could be these service robots tailored for professional use, where their goal is to support the workflow of hospital workers, carry and move supplies between different rooms, and even use the elevator. When it comes to service robots for hospitality use, you might be familiar with robots that prepare drinks or other robots that deliver foods right to your doorstep. Although such products currently exist on the market, needless to say, social robots are still novel products, especially in family life. And this situates the broader scheme of my work. So I argue that this novelty is bounded by certain challenges that are not just technical problems, but deeply social technical problems. In the rest of my talk, I'll address these challenges from an interaction design perspective and integration perspective. So from the interaction design perspective, a core challenge is designing robots that can offer enough meaningful value in the user's life that would support long-term use in real-world settings, and specifically designed to be adaptive to groups of users. And this requires a shift in how we think about human-robot interaction design, which is traditionally situated in controlled lab settings and with individual users. On the other hand, let's assume we resolve the interaction design challenges. This well-designed robot might still struggle to adapt to the real-world messiness of everyday life. For example, in a home context, it might often be physically complex, including unpredictable clutter, different layouts, and it might simply be full of surprises. Toys, siblings, pets, guests, dinner time, all of these will shape how and whether a robot will be used in the home. And another set of social challenges in setting setting expectations of users. And unfortunately, media portrayals of social robots often swing between two extremes. They're either these fantastical companions with superhuman powers, or they are destructive surveillance machines. And these portrayals do shape the public expectation or trust, and often shape their fears and concerns. What that results, the consequence of that perception are these unrealistic perceptions that will eventually contribute to the rejection of a product. I'll give you a couple examples. For example, these three robots on the left that you see, Anki, Jibo, and Kuri, these were robot platforms that were robot products that actually even failed even before I started my PhD. And then the example on the right, Moxie, was a really promising platform, in my opinion, for the public consumer, but just recently filed bankruptcy back in November. And reasons for these failures weren't just about the technology and its design. It was often about unmet expectations, limitations, and the long-term integration in daily life. So I believe that the real challenge is not just making robots that work, but making robots that stay. And I'll dive deep into one case study, this case example of Moxie. For example, when it was first released in 2023, and it was demoed at CES, and just last year in 2024, it was praised for its expressiveness and warmth. And the company put promising effort into designing the socially engaging experiences for this robot, which did create strong emotional connections between its users. The user base was often children and other vulnerable populations. And the strong emotional connection did support the regular use of the robot. However, when they went bankrupt abruptly, they were caught unprepared, and the responsibility of telling the children that the robot will no longer work actually fell on the parents to break the bad news. And here, again. Not sure if you can.
Yes, it's okay. No. Baby, what? Oh my God, really? Baby, it's okay. Oh, baby, I'm sorry. I don't want you to cry. Please stop.
Oh. So this video is actually a TikTok video posted by a parent telling their child, their 5-year-old, that Moxie will die. And we see this emotional reaction from the child that's being in distress. And this type of end result is something that we as roboticists really don't want to be happening. The short-sighted design from companies and signals that not just only good interaction design is enough, but ethical, holistic, and human-centered design matters.
Yes. Throughout your presentation, are we going to get hints as to why the Moxie experience failed?
That's so the question was, throughout my talk, will I see why the Moxie experience failed? So I won't be diving deep into that in this talk, but it's a future work that I'm currently working on and analyzing the public posts, like Reddit posts and TikTok videos of what happened. It's still evolving right now, so I don't have specific insights, but I think my argument will be that we need a family-centered approach for this reason, to prevent this from happening. Okay, is that? Yeah. Okay, so on the rest of my talk, I'll describe how my research addresses these core challenges of integration design. And so my research approach is deeply interdisciplinary. I've been specialized in qualitative, participatory, exploratory, and holistic design approaches. And I draw insights from the field of interaction design, and I use human ecology perspectives to describe real-world observations. I also draw insights from my background in cognitive science and computer science as a domain knowledge. And this approach allows me to ask richer questions, more in-depth answers, and not just about what works, but for whom, in what context, and in what consequences. And across my research, my thesis statement today that I'll be arguing is that my goal is to understand how family expectations, their real-world use patterns, reveal the importance of a family-centered approach in designing and integrating robots into everyday life. And if we unpack this, these three themes actually map one-to-one to my research threads that I'll be talking about. The challenges that I want to look at are the interaction design and integration challenges. And the long-term research goal and my vision is to be able to design robots for everyday life. And over the past few years, I've built a portfolio of research that I've either led or collaborated in, many of the people that are in this room right now, that focuses on these three main themes. The first theme focuses on eliciting design needs from target users or domain experts, conducting ethnographic observations of user behaviors through field deployments, and synthesizing these insights as developed frameworks and methods. Today in this talk, I'll be talking about three threads of work that fall into each category. First being, in the first thread, I focus on identifying families' needs and expectations from in-home social robots. In the second thread, I observe how robots are used in real-world family homes. And in the third thread, I collectively synthesize these insights into a family-centered design framework in HRI applications. So let's start with the first thread. In this thread, I address the interaction design challenges by focusing on what families want from an in-home robot. In the study, I conducted a participatory design workshop with parents and children, inviting them to imagine scenarios where a robot might help them at home. So in this study, we asked 6 families to create storyboards and scenarios, first including their daily activities, the frequency of it, who's involved, and where it takes place. Then these families selected a subset of scenarios based on whether a robot could support their daily routines. And finally, they acted out these scenarios to design their desired robot behaviors using the interactive materials we provided for them. And a couple of these design sessions did highlight several tensions between parents and children, specifically about the, and the family as a whole. For example, some of these tensions were related to the robot's role, where children saw it as a trustworthy companion. However, the parents saw it more as a utility and assistive values from the robot. And when it came to family groups, a recurring question was that who owns this robot? Should it prioritize the child or should it prioritize the parent? How do you balance assistance and independence? And regarding privacy concerns, there were unique and interesting insights that came out of our design sessions that moved beyond data privacy concerns. These privacy concerns were more about the interpersonal privacy concerns, specifically about conversational privacy management and whether and how the robot would and should keep secrets between family members. So let's say if you're planning for a surprise with some family members, would the robot actually share that information with another family member, or should it keep it to itself? And how does it make that decision? Although this work was impactful on its own, it also inspired several new research directions, advancing our understanding of child-robot interaction design. One of this work, for example, is where we dive deeper into the companionship role of in-home social robots, and we focused on a homework companionship role with our collaborators at University of Illinois, Chicago, where they designed a teacher-facing homework tool and where we studied how what students' needs and preferences for a homework companion robot might be. In another recent line of work, together with many collaborators that are here in this room, we explored families' use and mediation patterns using ChatGPT as an metaphor for like a digitally embodied interactive agent, where we identified several parent-child use profiles ranging from skeptical, cautious parents to parents that co-use ChatGPT together to more independent and trusting relationships. In another study led by Christine Lee, we co-designed and explored children's use patterns for unboxing a social robot in their home. And these studies connect the work to the next thread of my research, focusing on the integration challenges. So thread 2, I focus on investigating integration challenges in real-world human-robot interaction through studying how families actually use the robot in their home over a 1-month period of time. Here, we deploy the reading companion robot in homes and observed families' use patterns. For context, the study was conducted after the COVID pandemic, but before the whole LLM revolutions were happening. So just to keep that in mind as I go over my study, this was conducted in summer 2021. And the context of use was a fully autonomous, unsupervised reading companion robot deployed for 4 weeks in family homes. Children aged 10 to 12 read books out loud to the robot. And we collected data daily, including what books they read, how often they were engaged, how their parents supported them, and how the robot's interactions shaped their experience. We wanted to know what use and integration patterns emerged within the real homes. So I'll walk you through the interaction flow from the child's point of view, where imagine that one child has the robot in their home. The child will be reading out loud to the robot. The robot would be simulating this action of listening. And then when a child encounters augmented comments that we had placed within each book, in around every 2 to 3 pages, child would then show this page to the robot, and the robot would respond with a comment. From the robot's point of view, the interaction flow started as the child wake up the robot, and later the robot would identify the child and recommended books for the day. The child and the robot would then agree on a reading goal and starting the activity. And every few pages, the robot would offer a comment. It would be sometimes encouraging, sometimes reflective. The interaction continued until the reading goal was met, or when the child voluntarily chose to end the session. And at the end, the robot would say goodbye, and then it would go to sleep as the child would put it on its charging pad. And through thematic analysis of our data logs and interviews, I identified 4 types of use among 14 children, ranging from sustained adoption, interrupted use, selective engagement with modifications, and full disengagement. Basically, most children formed habits with the robot, but some stopped after having some life interruptions. A few continued reading, but they stopped reading with the robot. So the context, the routine, the family dynamics all played a role in the use patterns.
How much of these findings are dependent versus another role?
Yeah, so the question was how much of these findings are dependent on the actual technology. It's hard for me to predict that, given we didn't compare it, but I can imagine like any novel new technology, these patterns might exist. However, I think the novel findings, so let's say adoption and discontinuation might be more common, but the modified use cases are very tailored to the robot. It is influenced whether the child likes reading with the robot, they continue it, but they don't like the tags, or it's the other way around. They like hearing the comments, but they don't like reading out loud. So it's likely about that, but necessarily, maybe it's not necessarily about Misty as a robot, but a reading companion in the home might be like that. Okay. So, okay, let's see. So when we look at the factors that influence these observed use patterns that supported or hindered this integration, at a high level, some of these factors ranged from the novelty effects of meeting a new technology within their home, the varying levels of parental involvement, parents that were more encouraging or not, which room the robot was placed in the home. For example, if the robot is placed in the living room, there might be more family engagement versus some kids put the robot in their bedroom or in like the basement. That creates a more isolated interaction. And other broader family related factors, such as we had some children that had to move the robot between two homes because of their divorced parents. And they wanted to keep reading with the robot in the two locations, but that eventually created some hindrance because it became not as easy as they thought. So after we conducted a thematic analysis and we looked through the patterns, we then went into the data again and we conducted a video analysis from 160 videos from the reading sessions from the subset of children that adopted the robot. So in the video on your right, you see a recording from the robot's point of view. And then the child on the left is trying to set up the robot's reading session for the day. And you can see in the background, it illustrates how other family members in the background are trying to be engaged just in the beginning of this interaction. And this video data and many videos like this revealed something that our data logs and interviews and quantitative metrics didn't really reveal. These spontaneous and family involvements were unique within these settings. So parents were chiming in from the kitchen. Sometimes even the family cat is making an appearance. Siblings are engaged, etc. So this pointed us to the finding that we had some missed opportunities within the interaction design point of view to actively engage other family members and transform these moments where the robot wasn't just a personal device, but a catalyst for shared interaction. So to recap this, the interaction integration takeaway from this study is that the integration takeaway from the study is that child-robot interactions showed potential to transform into novel family-robot interactions. But the interaction design takeaway is that in-home robots in our design were not capable of recognizing, acknowledging, and interacting with surrounding family members. And this should be a future design integration requirement to promote novel family-robot interactions.
So how did the parents feel about this?
It ranged. The question was, how did the parents feel about this experience? I think that was the challenging part. It was hard to like find a pattern within there. So some parents would actually, we had weekly interviews throughout the 4 months. Some parents joined those interviews every week with their child. Even if they were at work, they joined the Zoom call from their office. And, in those settings, we were able to get, more, they were sharing things that maybe their children did not reveal. But in some other families, parents were like, oh, it's the robot for my child. And then they would only engage to like at the beginning and at the end. So it's hard to say. I think mostly they were curious and interested. But yeah, it's something hard to generalize. Okay. So this second thread of work really emphasized the need to moving towards a family-centered approach. At that time, we needed more methods, theories, or frameworks that would help us design and evaluate tools that are tailored to the family-robot interaction subdomain. And motivated by this, I've started building some of these approaches with my colleagues through workshops and papers, which I'm also excited to continue this work as I move forward in my career. An example publication, a recent collaboration with Michael, we adopted the family routines inventory that is commonly used in social work domain to be used as a contextual tool within HRI research to identify family routines and then rate how helpful the families might think a robot could be within their routines. So all of this work, both thread 1 and thread 2, ties to my third thread of work, proposing a theoretical framework, contextualizing a family-centered design approach to robot interaction design. My goal with this work was somewhat as a call to action for designers and roboticists to account for the full complexity of family life, including the varying roles, routines, values, and constraints. For this, I followed a deductive approach to draw insights from relevant family theories field and situate them within the HRI field. So we constructed this framework that has 3 core systems, the family system, the robot system, and the contextual system, which I'll unpack in a minute. So the family systems theory that we draw from informs that families are not just collections of individuals, but they're interconnected systems with their own unique roles, needs, and relationships. So when you think about this from a robot point of view, and if we think about a robot system, these robots also have their own unique roles, goals, and processes wherever they're situated in. So as we're integrating these robots within the family setting, we can infer that they will not only interact with a single user in isolation, but it will be entangled in the family system. So the sibling relationships, parent relationships, expectations, broader household dynamics, all of these will in some way or form impact the interactions between the robots and vice versa. So, and then the second part of this framework, I broadened the context into drawing insights from another theoretical model from Bronfenbrenner, the family ecological model. And this theory adds the second broader layer, which situates the family interactions within nested environments, ranging from micro level to macro level settings that capture individual interactions, cultural norms, societal structures. And the framework now that I propose brings a richer yet a challenging perspective to HRI. We ask the question of how does the environment surrounding the user and the robot shape its design and use? So throughout this thread of work, like I mentioned, we did a literature review looking at the papers currently available in the HRI context that we identified papers that consider either both of these directions, whether the family system has an impact on the robot system or the robot system has an impact on the family system. So for example, this first thread of work, some example papers looked at how family characteristics in some way or form shape design choices of the robot's interaction. And in the other way, how the robot's certain characteristics influenced and shaped family life. And the framework as a whole brings this dual perspective grounded in real-world studies. And I want to give you an example from this right-hand side bucket of papers that really made a, impression in as I was reading through it. So this one work they deployed a telepresence robot within the family's homes to be able to communicate with their children that are hospitalized in an oncology unit. So through this setting, the child in the oncology unit, because of their vulnerable situation, were not able to have their families visit them in person, but instead they would log into a tablet and then they would be able to physically control a telepresence robot within their home. And through that, they were able to participate in lunchtime, dinner time, conversations, maybe family play. And at the beginning, in this case study, there were positive reactions within the home. The family felt way more connected. They felt that they could interact with their child anytime. However, when they looked through this in a long term, maybe a couple weeks later, the hospitalized child naturally had days that they were feeling better and days that they were feeling worse and like tired. And that point created a lot of tension within the home setting because they had the telepresence robot as a reminder of their sibling, say that is in the hospital, but when their sibling did not call in, this created anxiety within the siblings at the home. So yes, we do have these positive outcomes of creating connections between facilitated through technology within the home and different setting, but also we need to look at this more broader holistic level of impacts that might or might not be our expected outcomes. So to wrap up this thread, this work and all the other, the two threads that I also mentioned, in this family-centered framework influence several directions that I'm currently actively contributing to. The first one with Kassam and Heather and Vilja, we're exploring privacy-aware home robots. That was initially inspired by that first thread and that finding that I mentioned at the beginning. And secondly, and maybe as a holistic point of view, our family-centered perspectives are supporting many of the other research threads that I'm contributing to. They're focusing on designing robots for long-term family-robot interactions. And we're currently exploring this new design questions, such as how can we design robots that support evolving routines? What does integration and personalization look like when we involve the whole family and not just as an individual? And these are the types of questions that I want to keep unpacking as I move forward with my career. And that will connect us to wrap up everything. I'd like to highlight the contributions within my thesis. To revisit the three threads, we looked at the design needs of families through understanding their expectations of an in-home social robot. We then looked at their use patterns through real-world deployments, and then consolidated all through a design framework and family-centered approach. Revisiting my thesis statement, I argue that these family expectations and real-world use patterns reveal the importance of the family-centered approach in the interaction design and integration of social robots for everyday life. So this maps onto three core contributions of my thesis. First being interaction design methods. I propose participatory and family-centered approaches for designing and studying how robots can support shared family routines, ethical use, and long-term engagement. Second thread is empirical insights that I provide understanding of how families envision and use social robots through both speculative design and real-world deployment studies. And third, through this family-centered framework for HRI, I propose a theoretical framework that integrates these family systems theory and ecological models to guide the future of HRI research and design practices. So what's next? I hope that in my future research, I'd like to continue on designing robots that are embedded into everyday family life. And this might include continuing and advancing the work in the interaction design challenges and real-world integration. But as I move and advance my work, I also want to move beyond just family homes. I want to transfer my skill set to applications within broader communities, institutions, and workplaces. For example, I'm interested in bridging creative arts and perspectives as we're designing robots, and I'm interested in the human-centered integration within real-world settings. So that wraps up the general, I guess, my talk for today. I do want to thank many of you that are here online. that made this journey possible. First, my committee members, Bivye, Yasol, Qassem, Heather, and Salma. I do want to thank Joe, Sarah, and Maggie for helping me shape a lot of my research publications that I presented today. And also all of the students within the lab that I've collaborated with, Nathan, Irene, Rabia, Christine, Dakota, Pragathi, Amy, Michael, Jenica, and Shirley. This work would not have been possible without our collaborations. And I'm very lucky to be part of a beautiful lab, People and Robots Lab. Just a small representation of our lab. There are a couple of people that I might have missed within these photos. I feel very lucky and grateful to be part of this lab. I do want to specifically thank you, Heather, Maggie, please let her know, and also Jenica for introducing me to this family-centered approaches field through my PhD minor in the School of Human Ecology and Human Development and Family Studies. I think that's one of the best decisions that I've made throughout my PhD, so thank you. I do also want to acknowledge my West Coast family, my second home, I can call them. Norman has gracefully hosted me at UC Santa Cruz. Rebecca, Norman's postdoc, has been a great support throughout my time there. Little photo, again, missing a couple people, I want to acknowledge. And all of my conference buddies and my internship buddies that also we have made our place to, that we met each other at CHI last year. So it was really wholesome. And last but not least, I would like to thank my family, my mom, my brother, my dad, and my brother, little family of my own, and also my close friends. I do want to, I'm grateful for the support. I've been thinking this morning, I was like, I came to this country hoping that I'll get a PhD degree, but I feel I've made new families and my chosen family, and I am just very grateful. This would not have been possible without all of these great people and many of you that I could not simply fit into this slide. So that being said, I'd like to wrap up my thesis defense and opening up to questions. Yes.
Okay, well,
Okay.
thank you.
Let's
You know-
change the camera, right?
Great acknowledgement, but we still have to pass.
Okay.
So, we're gonna go to the committee discussion now, questions. We usually do this in terms of distance. I'm a little conflicted now whether Yasul or Selma is more distant. I think I'd like to go with Selma.
Both of them are in the same time zone, but yeah,
Well,
different
actually,
states.
and Yasul's not here anymore either, so institutional distant as well. Why don't we go with Selma? So Professor Shabanovich is calling from Indiana University. Selma, take it away, your questions.
Sure. Thank you. Bangisu, thank you so much for the wonderful dissertation, the write-up. It was really fun to read, and also your presentation. I think there's even more rich information here. So it was, even though I knew what you were doing, this was extra interesting stuff to see. I have a few different questions. One thing I wanted to ask is when you're